The RAF Marham Heritage Centre is a special place where you instantly step back in time and interact with the past and history of RAF Marham. There are no aircraft at the Heritage Centre, but it brings you the stories, the photos, the clothing and artefacts of the very men that flew them.
The RAF got a lot of bad press because they weren't seen over the beaches protecting the evacuation, and they weren't over the beaches. They were actually further inland trying to stop, if they were fighters, trying to stop the German bombers getting to the beaches. Essentially, this lady turned up and said, "I brought your aeroplane back." And the story behind this aeroplane was it's Wellington aircraft that flew from RAF Marham, and it crashed in Narborough. And what happened is that they'd successfully completed their mission, and they came back, and it was a really murky night. And they decided that to stop them colliding with someone else who was also trying to land at Marham, they would switch their landing lights on so that everybody could see them. And unfortunately, what they didn't realise is that somebody did see them. A German night fighter had trailed them back and shot them down. And the crew all survived, luckily. And the kids, when they've cleared the debris, kids at the time would collect souvenirs, and they all scuttled out in the fields and picked up a piece of Wellington. And in 2013, when we reopened here, this lady brought our Wellington back for us. And the crazy thing about it is we can even tell you which aircraft it came from, and that's how we knew what happened to the aircraft, and also exactly where it comes from on the aircraft, because it's got individual part numbers on it. And it actually comes from this area on the nose of the aircraft here. A piece of a Wellington that came back to us after 80 years.
The Heritage Centre is run by ex-RAF Marham crew, ranging in various trades from aircrew to engineers, armourers to logistics. The moment you step inside into the Heritage Centre, you step back in time. The guys will make the whole experience very personal to you and bring it to life with their in-depth stories. Their passion and pride brings out the colours of the black and white, and their experience brings the realism too. The Heritage Centre will take you on a journey from 1916 to present day. From the start in 1916, Marham Base was originally a military night landing ground used by the Royal Flying Corps. Marham was originally used in the First World War, focusing on defending the UK from Zeppelin raids. Marham Aerodrome was closed in 1919, but it reopened on the 1st of April 1937 as a station for 2 heavy bomber squadrons, one of which was 115 Squadron, which Ted flew with at RAF Wittering in 2022. Marham was a frontline bomber base, but fortunately the more modern Wellington bomber had arrived before war broke out in 1939. Marham was involved for the first weeks in the Bomber Command Offensive and remained so for the next 5 years. In the late 1940s, RAF Marham regularly hosted the United States Air Force with B-29 Superfortress bombers. In 1956, RAF Marham became one of the first V-4 bases equipped with Vickers Valiant aircraft, and a year later with a nuclear deterrent capability. Then in 1957, the atom bomb arrived at RAF Marham.
And she treated her dad badly because he would never tell her what he'd done. And it wasn't until she actually got talking with her brother, and her brother said to her, "Well, let's do a bit of research about this, because I know some of it because he's told me, but he hasn't told you." and you'll find out, why he never told you. And again, Mark got heavily involved, and he put together a portfolio of this guy's career and his life in the Air Force throughout the Second World War for somebody. What you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and it's very, very difficult to explain to somebody after you've been on operation what you did and some of the things that you may have seen and done while you were there. We had an example of a lady came in.
When you step back into the times of World War II, some of the stories are very, very dark. The guys at the Heritage Centre will tell you the stories, but because of their experience and background, make them very, very vivid, almost a virtual reality, telling you all the details that the pilots and crew were experiencing during the times of World War II. You'll also learn about the iconic aircraft that once served RAF Marham, such as the Vickers Valiant, the English Electric Canberra and the Tornado GR4. The Tornado went on to have a rich service for over 37 years and was involved in the UK's operations in the Middle East, such as Desert Storm, Granby, Op Herrick, Op Ellamy and Op Shader. One of the significant operations occurred on the night of 20th of March 2011. Tornado GR4s flew a 3,000-mile round trip from Marham to carry out strikes against targets in Libya as part of Operation Ellamy.
And there she is, that's Philip Taylor's Air Force uniform. Let me tell you a story about this guy here. So, Leslie William George Smith, Navigator, Wellingtons, based here at RAF Marham on 115 Squadron. So, what's exceptional about this is he made that model, he did that painting, and there he is. So he gets posted to Marham, and in 1940, you can see from his logbook there, he is on a raid to Stavanger. So the German military have invaded Norway, and they're trying to resupply their people on the ground by air, so they're using Stavanger airfield. So the Marhams here are going to go and disrupt that. So they fly the Marhams up to Scotland, shortest point across the North Sea, and fly from Scotland across to Stavanger, but the raid goes a little bit sideways and the aircraft get split up. They can't provide covering fire for each other, and a lot of them take a lot of damage. One of the aircraft, you can see in his logbook there, it says wounded. So as the Navigator in a Wellington, he's got to find his way home. He can't, because he's been injured in the leg, the thigh, side of his chest, gunshot wounds. Basically, a flak shell has really, really damaged him, and he's bleeding out. So they put him on the rest bed, pump him full of morphine, and they think when they get back to Scotland he's going to be dead, if indeed they get back to Scotland. The second pilot takes over as Navigator, flies them back to Scotland, they land on, and they expect to go down to the rest bed and find him dead. He's not. So they get him off to Elgin Hospital, where the medical people say, right, let's have his leg off. At that point, a Polish doctor steps in and says, hang on a minute, I can save that leg, I'll have a go. And they save his leg. So he actually still got his legs. For all his life after that, he walked with a bit of a limp, and his grandson remembers sitting on his lap and bits of metal coming out of his leg still, because it's still full of legs, full of shell fragment. If you look at the discharge certificate here, it says GSW, chest and thigh, knee and foot right. So he was all up his right hand side, he was damaged, and this is the discharge certificate from Elgin Hospital in Scotland. So the squadron, once it had done its job up in Scotland, had come back to Marham and left him in hospital. So he's in hospital. And this piece of document here is a packing note which sends him up a new uniform, because clearly they cut his uniform off him. And those pieces of paper never exist anywhere, but it survived in the family vault somewhere. And you can see there, Sergeant Smith, tunic and trousers, written on the packing note, which is going up to Scotland. So he's got some clothes to wear. So he comes back to Marham, and they medical board him, and they put him back on flying ops. So these are the lists of the operations he completed after Stavanger. You can see Stavanger on there, severely wounded, and then he does about another 6 or 7 trips. And they realise he's quite broken, so they medical board him again, and he's taken off flying, but he becomes a navigating instructor. So for the rest of the war, he instructed navigators on how to do their job. That's commitment and loyalty. So what we've got here are two German aircraft which attacked East Anglia in World War II. They are a Dornier 217E and a Ju-88 C4 night fighter. Now the Ju-88 was an intruder. They would follow the bomber stream back, and when our bombers were at their most vulnerable, i.e. they put their navigation lights on because they don't want to collide with some of their own pals in the circuit of trying to get back into their airbase, the German night fighter would attack and spray them full of machine gun cannon shells and shoot them down. Don't think bad of them, because we did the same thing. We did the same thing over there. This Dornier 217 was on a bombing trip. It crashed in East Walton Wood, Norfolk, and these Dornier crew, Oberfeldwebel, Rockstow, Oberfeldwebel, Bodenhagen, Hauptmann, Hellman and Oberfeldwebel Rummelt, they're all buried in Marham Cemetery down the bottom of the hill. So they are buried quite local. One of the guys out of this plane, he's buried in the Marham Cemetery. But you can see, I mean, to me, I've been to a lot of crashed aircraft sites. This to me is telling me a story, and that story is this aircraft burnt. Why? Because that is a machine gun bullet stroke cannon shell, and you can see by the back end the percussion cap has been popped off. In technical terms, that means the heat's got to it and it's exploded. The bullet has actually exploded. You can see the case there, and the case has blown open. You don't want to be anywhere near an aircraft when its ammo is popping off, because those rounds, even though there's no barrel for them to go through, those rounds are popping off all over the shop and they can go in all sorts of directions. So there's that caliber weapon on the Dornier, a smaller caliber machine gun, and a larger caliber cannon. That one hasn't popped off, as you can see, but it hasn't got a percussion cap, so I would dare say that that has popped off at some stage during that fire. There's some amazing pieces of mangled wreckage there. Many people say, well, what is the excitement about a bent bit of metal? Well, to us, they're not just bent bits of metal. Each piece of these aeroplanes tells a story of human endeavour and human survival, and the picking the wits of one airman against another airman in the night skies over the UK during the 1940s. And really, they were just people. They were just airmen, the same as the rest of us. Where you can see for this Ju-88, you can see the popped off rounds. That's a clear indication. That's where the bullet head goes there, and you can see that the case is actually split open, and the percussion cap has been popped off. So, lots of evidence. Excited about that, and it would have fitted a German incendiary 1 kilogram bomb. You see that? So this is a mock-up. This is a plasticide version of it, but that's a fuse that would. Awesome.
Nice one, Ted. So this is for those that know.
250 litre drop tank, which was jettisoned off a jet which was in trouble, coming into Joy Del Col Air Base in 2011 on Operation LME, which is Operation LME, where our aircraft were deployed to southern Italy to undertake operations in and over Libya in North Africa. So he was having problems coming in and had to jettison both his tanks, jettisoned them. They landed in a farmer's field outside the airbase. He landed on, dropped his hook, took the cable and saved the jet, but these bits and pieces were in the farmer's field. So the engineering lot went out and stole a piece and turned it into their scoreboard for the operation. So here we have paveway. Each C is 100, so it's 500 plus paveways. This beastie here is brimstone. It says 80 odd brimstones. The lump there are drop tanks. One of these is one of those marks on there, and this is a laser spike because they were laser designating for Typhoon, which were also deployed with us to drop bombs. There you go, good bit of history there.
Thank you.
And when you finally reach the present day, RAF Marham is home to the 5th generation stealth fighter jet, F35B. It is flown by 617 Squadron and RAF Marham's Operational Conversion Unit 207 Squadron. So next time you're out plane spotting at RAF Marham or passing nearby, take this turning and make sure you visit the RAF Marham Aviation Heritage Centre.